Hi class, this screencast is designed to help you revise and edit your informational essay exam, specifically focusing on that pie body paragraph. So as I was reading your body paragraphs for the exam, I noticed two really common errors. One is that oftentimes the writer doesn't state the character's action when making their point. So remember, the prompt asks you to choose a character, either Travis or Benita. In the thesis, you should have stated that character's want and the obstacle. And then the pie paragraph was supposed to focus on the character's action. So in some cases, I got all the way through the entire essay and the writer never said anything about the character's action. The second thing I noticed is that oftentimes the writer used way too much dialogue, and this became really confusing for the reader. Sometimes there'll be quotes and then there's a line from one character and it goes on to the next character and back to the first character, and it was really hard to follow. We'll look at an example of this in a minute. So let's address the first point. I want to make sure that as you're editing and revising, you look for the fact that you stated the character's action when you make your point. So I'm looking for this in the pie paragraph. You have a couple options here. You can write a double pie paragraph, which would be similar to a double quote sandwich like we used last year, where you state the character's want and obstacle when you make your first point. Then you use some evidence to support that. And then you transition to make another point about the character's action. Another option is just to state the character's want and obstacle in your thesis, and in the body paragraph just use a single pie paragraph to state the character's action. So here's what I mean. Both of these are frames for that body paragraph. So if you want to use a double pie paragraph, you could start by making a point where you state the character's want and obstacle. For example, you could say, Walter really wants to open a liquor store, but Ruth doesn't approve. Then you can have evidence to support that point. Tell me how that evidence supports your point. Then transition to a second point where you state the character's action and say something like this. After Walter realizes he isn't going to get the support he wants, he gets frustrated and yells at his wife. Then you give me evidence to support the second point and explain to me how that evidence supports the point. The second option was to make sure that you state the character's want and obstacle in your thesis. Then your body paragraph would look like this second option, where your point only states the character's action with evidence to support that action and a sentence to prove how that evidence supports your point. So as you're looking at that body paragraph, please make sure that you used one of these two choices so that your writing doesn't become too confusing. If you need to pause and look for that right now, you may. The second thing I noticed is that kids were using way too much dialogue, and this became really confusing. So just a couple things I want you to be aware of. First of all, do not quote lines from more than one character at a time, and we'll look at this in a second. If you do want to include a conversation between two characters, that's okay. But what I would like you to do is summarize as much as you can when you're giving the context for the quote. Then be really picky about the part of the excerpt that helps you make your point and only quote that part. Another option would be just to use indirect quotes to summarize the whole excerpt. So for example, you could take what happened in that excerpt and just put the whole thing in your own words. and I'll show you what that looks like. So here's a student example where the student was trying to make a point that when Travis didn't get what he wants, he tells his father. And then the student attempts to take a quote right here. But if you read through this quote, you can see it's super confusing. We have some lines from the narrator telling us what it is the characters are doing. Then here, I think Walter's asking what is it he wants to do. And then Ruth says back, go carry groceries after school at the supermarket. And then I think this is Walter saying, well, let him go. Then we have the narrator again. And now Travis jumps in and says, I have to. She won't give me the 50 cents. So as you can see, this is just really confusing as a reader. So one way I might solve this problem is just to take that whole part and put it in my own words. So if I'm trying to prove the point that Travis doesn't get what he wants, so he tells his father, I could just say in the play Raisin in the Sun, scene 1, when Walter comes out of the bathroom and finds Ruth and Travis talking about money, Travis tells Walter that he has to go carry groceries at the supermarket because he needs 50 cents for school. Upon hearing this, Walter reaches into his pocket and gives Travis the money he needs for class. This makes it so much easier for me to follow and know who said what, and it really helps me to see how this quote actually proves that Walter told his father when he didn't get what he wants. So I hope all of these tips help you to revise and edit your own pie paragraph. Thank you.